there's no right or wrong way to go about mourning and grieving your loved one or losses. So regardless of what your response is to what has happened to you, you have to get ready. You need to brace up for the grief police, like I call them, and their judgments. These self-appointed judges have an idea of how you should handle your loss, even though it didn't happen to them directly. So they have a timetable mapped out for you on how you should behave, how you should respond from day to day. Some of them will complain about how you are moving on too soon, and they'll come up with postulations that you never loved the person as you claim to have done. It's so common in Africa, for instance, when a woman loses her husband, people, especially her husband's family, come out and they accuse her of killing him, and all sorts happen to her. Men get this as well, but majorly is the women. So the woman gets double grief for daring to allow her husband to die, in quotes. And there are others that will feel that in their own estimation, you've had reasonable time to mourn and you should get over it already. If you pick up the pieces, you are damned by their judgments. If you don't handle it well, you are still damned. So either way, whatever you do, you're condemned to their judgment. You can't get it right in their eyes. So that is why you should not magnify the voices of the grief police in your head. The truth is that no one knows what it really feels like except they have walked that road themselves. So it's so amazing to me how people who do not have a firm or deep understanding of what has happened are so sure of their judgment, about an experience they don't understand. So this is why you should not make their voices important to you. Trivialize whatever it is that they are saying, because your grief must not conform to a stereotype. You process your loss dependent on maybe things like your personality, your temperament, the depth of relationship that you had with the person, even birth order. I've heard that some children who are only children tend to process grief differently than people that were in a family. I, for instance, didn't wear black at all. The few times I wore black was because I had black outfits already in my wardrobe that I felt like wearing. I wanted to celebrate my husband's homegoing in a way that was tailored to how he lived. He challenged conventions in a positive way. He did not believe in conforming to the status quo. So we made colored t-shirts and hoodies, and we encouraged family members, we encourage friends, mentees, colleagues to come for the homegoing ceremonies in those. I could almost picture him leap with joy at the many array of colors turned out to send him home, even as I imagine him waking up to brilliant hues of colors on the other side, such as earth has not seen ever. If you've lost a spouse, chances are that you probably find yourself exhibiting some weird behaviors that others could see and think you're going crazy. You yourself could think that you're going crazy, but it's all perfectly normal. Some of the things that I've found myself doing this season, we left Baodan's clothes hanging in the wardrobe and his things just the way he left it. The children specifically asked that I leave his clothes there because it gave them some level of comfort. It also gave me some level of comfort. But we know that at some point we have to deal with disposing of them. And also, when I walk past my husband's pictures in the house, because his pictures are all over the house, sometimes I talk to it or I wave at it, and I talk to the picture and ask questions like, why did you leave me? You promised that you'll be there and you left. Or sometimes I look at the chair in a part of our room, which is like a study. He used to love sitting there for his research and studies, and I'd imagine him appearing there as I turned. So I would keep staring at that chair. The first time I went to a market with my people at home, I reminded my girl to buy corn so we could make some pap for my husband, which he really used to love. Then I stopped myself because I remembered he was not waiting for me at home anymore. It made me quite teary. Yours could be different, but you're not crazy. You're not becoming crazy. You'll be okay. It's part of the whole grieving process. And if you need to get professional counseling, please do. It's not really a thing here, but more people are becoming aware of grief counseling, so it helps put a lot of things in perspective for you. Some of the things that could also happen as a result of the death is that you discover some relationships change. In-law relationships, for instance, change. Nothing on earth's hidden anger, hostilities, and spitefulness from some in-laws or relatives, like the loss of a spouse, especially in a society where a woman who suffers loss becomes the victim of all sorts of hatred and abuse in the hands of in-laws, and the relationship become a bit tricky and complex. So the love of your loved one is a primary loss, but it will trigger secondary losses in the way the dynamics of your social or family relationships change drastically. You may have had mistaken assumptions that all was good and dandy until the death triggers actions that you never thought was lurking in dark corners. So death can bring out the worst or the best in any family. I remember when my father passed on in 2017, my family and I became a strong, formidable unit of support for each other. And it's the same way they came out in full force to support me in this season of loss. So sadly, I did not get that from my husband's family. I was treated like an enemy and hit with all sorts of funny letters. And at the end, it's only my brothers-in-law who attended the funeral and were quite supportive, which I had to accept, even though I would not have wanted it to be like that. So depending on the bond, it could be good or bad. Mine was not very good. They insisted that I should bring his body home, and there were so many lies that were told about me in that season that I wanted to just throw my husband's body away in a bush in Lagos when I could bury him in his house or the village. There was even talk that in the estate where we lived, that there's a cemetery there, and that I could have buried him in his compound, but I refused to do that because I want to go and throw him away. Even when people know fully well that in Lagos State, for instance, you cannot bury people in places that are not approved. Even when they knew from the outset that we're not going to bring the body home for the funeral, we had met the family, and I thought that we had settled that matter, only for it to crop up because I lost my mother-in-law to like 18 days after my husband passed. My mother-in-law passed. So that one also generated a fresh bout of problems, because when the letters came, they said my husband was their illustrious son. He was an international guru type. This is a quote from the letter. He was the international guru type son. So I got letters from the family, I got letters from the paramount ruler, and in those letters they copied the commissioner of police, they copied the my local government chairman, they copied the head of all the chiefs in Akwa Ibom, because I'm from Akwa Ibom State in the south part of Nigeria. They copied him, and they copied my family head as well. So it became a bit of an issue because they were insisting that I needed to bring his body home, and that was against my husband's wishes. It's something that even in his videos, he used to openly talk about family relationships and dynamics, about the things he faced growing up. And for him, he wanted to carve out a totally new family. He wanted a different family dynamic, you know. So for me, agreeing that his body be taken home, going by what they were saying, would have been me betraying him, me letting him down, because that's not what he would have wanted. So it gave me closure, it gave my children closure to know that we buried him where he would have wanted to be buried, in Lagos, where he lived and worked and did so much. So that brought about a lot of family issues, but in the end, he was buried here. I'm always quick to point out that I'm not against culture, because the Bible says give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, which we did in that season. We met my mother-in-law at that time had said that she wouldn't want me to go home because of the state I was in at that time, and she said that she was going to send people on my behalf. So my brother went, my brother-in-law went, and another family member went, met with family, and they made their demands. They gave a list of the items that they wanted. So because it's part of the culture here in Africa, you know, somebody dies and then you have to go and buy a lot of, they list so many things, including goats, drinks, and things like that. Fine, I didn't have an issue with that. So they went and those demands were met, and they said okay, that they've given the go ahead, only for things to turn the other way. When my mother-in-law passed on 18 days later, they now started demanding that I should come home again after their demands had been met. So it was at that point that I said no. I needed to put my foot down and insist that what my husband would have wanted is what would happen. So it wasn't easy. I was treated like an outcast. I was treated like the enemy, me who was in pain, feeling, who had experienced this loss, and my children. There was no empathy or sympathy from them. Nobody called to say, how are you and the children coping in the midst of all this loss? What everybody was focused on was me coming home, without nobody clearly defined why I needed to come home, because we had met those demands. So I needed to put my foot down and ensure that my husband's wishes were met, and he was laid to rest where he wanted to be led to rest. So you will experience some of these dynamics when a loss has happened, especially if you are an African. If you live in Africa, you will experience some of these things, and you need to have a good support system to be able to help you process, to be able to help you go through that whole process, because it can be really painful. It was a painful one. There were times that I was so down. There were times that I cried. There were times that once my phone rings, I will begin to wonder, what is it again this time? What have they said again? What have they done again? You know, but God really helped me as well, because it didn't break me down to the point where I was helpless. It did not. In a way, the more the trouble came at me, the more some sort of resilience was building up inside me, and I believe that it was God in action. It was God, and that is why I don't really know how people go through grief who do not have God in their life, because that was like an anchor, a support for me throughout that period. So ensure that you surround yourself with good support system, because you need people to hold your hands through this dark season until you're able to have some sort of clarity. And even when it looks as if there's light, you still need people. You still need people to be there to support you through the whole process. But do not feel weird if after 5 months, 6 months, if after a year you still feel the grief keeps hitting you afresh. Do not feel weird, because grief is not like a destination that you get to. This is something that comes and goes. Some days you feel okay, other days you don't feel so okay, and it's something, a pain that you probably process for the rest of your life. But you have to move on. You have to live your life in spite of what has happened, and that is my wish and my prayer, that whatever has hit you in this season, whatever losses you have suffered, whether it's a loss of a spouse, whether it's a loss of a child, whether it's a loss of a relationship through divorce, whether it's a loss of your home, a loss of your dreams, please pick up the pieces and try again. Do not give up. Do not give up prematurely. There's still so much in you that needs to come out. Please let it come out and bless you, and bless the people around you, and bless your generation. You were made for more, and you can still be more in spite of what has happened. Thank you for listening again. Please ensure that you touch that notification button, subscribe, invite a friend to be part of watching the video, and don't go away until you have subscribed. Thank you. I appreciate your listening.